And we're live for real now. So thanks all of you for joining this call. So today we're having our first Common Stack AMA. We're going to answer all of your questions. Thank you so much for joining. And so first of all, we're going to start by just introducing ourselves. So I am Chris. I work in communications for the Common Stack, and I'll be facilitating this call a little bit to start it off. And first of all, so I'll pass it along. So I give it to Jeff.
Hey everybody, Jeff here. I'm working on the token engineering research side of the Common Stack and helping to translate Michael Zargham's work into applicable tools that we can implement in the Common Stack to better serve nonprofit world. Then I'll pass it on to Lorelei.
Hey, I'm Lorelei, or Loey, and I manage a lot of healthy relationships in the Common Stack, keeping our team working, as well as some of the external relationships with all of you guys and our fantastic contributors. And I just keep things running and do admin. And I will pass it to Griff.
Hi, yeah, I'm Griff Green. I worked with Slocken and the DAO back in the day. Push Giveth forward, DAppNode, Ident3, BrightID, Signals, and probably some other projects that I'm forgetting. I really just love supporting the Commons, especially in the Ethereum space. And that's why I'm so excited about pushing this project forward. In general, I kind of work on just making sure it all happens, whatever it takes, kind of like a producer, product owner type. And yeah, I'll pass it to Z.
Hey, I'm Michael Zargham. I'm a researcher. I've been working on social and economic systems for the last 15 years or so. I'm lucky enough to get involved with Griff and Jeff and everybody here. And I've been working with Block Science, which is a research firm that I run. And I've been working with the Vienna Institute for Crypto Economics, sort of pushing forward both the practical, applied, and academic research on how to basically incentivize and support collaborative ecosystems.
Oh, you got to pass it.
Pass it to Coach B.
Yeah, my name is Bernd. I'm. It's hard to pronounce, so you can also call me Coach B because of my sports background. And I'm involved in also many projects: Swarm City, Avado, and now Casper Labs as well, and the Common Stack for sure. And I've helped to organize the administrative side and the legal side. And I'll give it back to Chris.
Oh, you're muted, Chris.
Yeah, okay, and I'm back. Okay, thank you for that introduction, and we'll immediately go, well, we'll first start with some introductory questions. So my first question for you, Griff, is how would you describe the vision of the Common Stack? What do we want to achieve in the world?
I think our goal is generally to make sure that the value, when people contribute to value to public goods, they are rewarded. To align incentives within the nonprofit space, because nonprofits produce value. And I think the Common Stack has an opportunity to actually make a world where that value is recognized by the rest of society on the economic plane, because it's just being exploited, right? The environment or any kind of shared resource that the world has, there's a free rider issue that no one wants to contribute. There's no reason for anyone to contribute to the public good.
The tricky thing is with the Commons, it's very difficult to have a revenue model because with non-excludable, non-rivalrous goods, you can't actually sell a product to someone, so it's very hard to create a business model around it. So this is why we're creating the Common Stack as a tech stack for the Commons, so we can begin to value these public goods in a way that puts them somewhat on par with other forms of for-profit endeavors.
Okay, great. Thanks for that answer. Now I'm wondering, I know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. But how would you describe, like, if you talk about like the mission of the Common Stack? What is like a long-term mission, a medium mission, like, and then the short term? What are you going to do to tackle this?
Jeff, you want to take long term?
Yeah, sure. So in the long term, we'd love to see a Common Stack component library take shape, and this is basically an open token engineering library of various crypto economic components, some of them primitives. They could be governance tools, funding tools, initialization tools. And basically, we're trying to create an easy way that we can integrate complexity and the engineering process into building these crypto economic networks. So ideally, anyone could come along and take, a bonding curve and a governance mechanism that is appropriate for their system. Maybe that's conviction voting, maybe something different. Combine them, simulate them holistically in CAD, and launch a token network that meets their design specifications.
Yeah, in the long run, we hope that there's a bunch of people who have put a lot of tools in the toolkit, and that the Common Stack has kind of taken a librarian role of just making sure all the pieces fit together and they're in the right place and everyone can access them. In the medium term, we're trying to produce what we call a minimum viable commons. Basically a commons that has a fully fleshed out incentive layer, a really interoperable proposal engine, a solid governance layer that's designed from first principles, and a monitoring layer with all the high-tech tools that we can throw in with machine learning and AI predictive modeling on how well the system is running. So a minimum viable commons will be a fully complete commons that will be out of the box, ready to deploy, and easy to use by any kind of project, not just high-tech projects. It's our first solution for the funding layer is the augmented bonding curve. Then we're going to have a Giveth proposal engine so that the commons can interoperate with outside donors. Then we're going to use conviction voting as well as just normal DAO governance on the governance layer. And then we have what we call the Commons Analytics Dashboard, which will be a mix of impact assessment on how well the commons is actually providing value to the public good, as well as integration with CAD, so that you can actually monitor how well the crypto system is functioning, and if, according to past data, if it's in danger of failing.
Oh, what's first principles?
I'll let Zargham jump in on what first principles are.
Oh boy. Okay. So first principles is basically when, instead of mimicking patterns that you've seen in the past, you examine the sort of reasoning and justification for those decisions. This is far more effective when you're dealing with novel spaces because patterns don't match very well. You get a scenario where the best solution is very context dependent. And in some ways, you can think about it as digging down one level or two into the problem you're solving and understanding how and why decisions are made, rather than simply sort of looking at other decisions that have been made for similar problems. Very common in engineering, we build bridges or we build roads from the first principles of roads and bridges, rather than saying, okay, where are the plans from that other road or that other bridge and how do I adapt them? So it's a slightly different frame. It's almost bottom up, which I think people should appreciate in this space.
Yeah, there's actually a really good video by Elon Musk, of all people, just like explaining first principles. That's where it first clicked for me, honestly. There was just a short 2-minute video where Elon explains that he uses first principles, which is funny. But now I think the next one is our short-term plan, like our first commons. Do you want to take it or do you want me to?
You go right ahead if you got some steam.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man, I got coffee running through my veins. So, we're going to launch what we call the Token Engineering Commons. It's going to be our first effort to build a field test commons. It's going to be scoped very small. The goal is actually to initiate the modeling of crypto economic systems. There really hasn't been anyone that has pushed open source modeling tools out into the world except for Zargham. So we're very lucky to be working with Block Science on building that. But the modeling is always going to be tough. Like starting out, someone has to bite the bullet and make the first models. So for our commons, that's going to we chose the Token Engineering Commons to be the guys to really trailblaze this whole ecosystem forward, because they are the ones with the best expertise on figuring out how to improve this system. So if we get all the token engineers together and we build a commons for them, then they will want it to succeed. So now they have skin in the game to improve the system and make it work for all of us. Z, do you have anything you want to add on that?
I want to add that the really important part of this decision was that we have a community that's collaborating with us. So we talk a lot about the commons in the context of people talk about the physical aspects or the technical aspects, like what's being managed and maintained. But the people who make it up are a critical component of that commons, the community. And in the token engineering sense, there's a really rich community that's been emerging, people that are not, Common Stack team members or block science team members, just token engineering researchers, having meetups, doing designs, sharing best practices, discussing what the first principles are. And it's actually through that community that we were sort of motivated to use this as our first case. So it affects our ability to do this. So there's a lot of positive feedback between our work and their work, but it's actually a distinct community that we are collaborating with as part of our essentially user research to understand what a community needs in the form of infrastructure to actually have a common collaborative sort of development effort, research effort.
And of course, we want to make sure people know how to use MetaMask and the different tooling that we expect people to have to use, and not be hung up on trying to help more of a classical nonprofit that the experts that we'd want to onboard may not be familiar with a lot of the blockchain UX issues, let's say.
Yeah, and well, to jump right in, by the way, you were talking about skin in the game, Griff, and we have actually right now 19 people watching us live, so that's fantastic. Thanks all of you for joining, and we have lots of support there. And there is one specific question on what you said, Griff, on like having skin in the game. So, and the question from Alex is, are any of the tools going to focus on how to insert skin in the game principles into any project? That was the question.
Well, that's kind of the augmented bonding curve and the hatch phase in itself. That's where we gather the community and the experts that know best about how to support the public good that they want to build a commons around. And you get them all to actually put their money and reputation on the line so that they are incentivized to see the commons succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And not just that we have a system to value time commitments as well as financial commitments. So we value people's time and effort that they put into both the Common Stack and the commons that will be launched using Common Stack infrastructure by allowing them to submit proposals to that community and earn the local token generated by that local augmented bonding curve commons ecosystem, so that the more work you do in a system, the more say you have over the governance of that system. So it's not just financial skin in the game, it's also time contributed, which we think is really important.
I wanted to add too that the term skin in the game has gotten really, really popular in the sort of very financialized subset of systems, and that we have to remember that that is actually an economic overlay on top of what is naturally a social sort of skin in the game, and that it is actually relatively borne out in the behavioral economics literature that if you impose a financial reward, you can actually inadvertently destroy the sort of underlying social reward. And so we're very careful.
Oh, a bit of a connection issue for Zargham, I think. Or is it just me?
I can try to finish his thought, which is that, Z, you're back. So we're being very careful. We lost you we're being very careful to balance the social reward with the financial reward.
And to avoid the cases where you inadvertently delete a social reward because you've imposed the financial one. Sometimes the rewards are actually drawn from the fact that there's provenance in your identity. Like you do stuff and that's recorded and known in the community. That is in and of itself is a kind of contribution for which there's non-trivial social reward. So we want to keep both, and we want to make sure that the community itself is making choices about what kinds of value they're creating and how it's managed. So it's supports the broader notion of skin in the game, and that the notion that makes sense actually depends on the community and on the commons itself.
And
that's why it's so important to have like multiple entry points and multiple types of entry points into any tool or community, is because like people, if you only get people entering through like donating money or whatever, it's going to be a very one-dimensional community. And I think it probably does, like, it does reflect good like first principles practices to understand that, like, yeah, I mean, if we look at at economies or whatever public goods that have been successfully managed in the past, maybe even before humans had money, there were these like social entry points and these social buy-ins and skin in the game that was like super successful for managing systems like this. But now we live in this world where people need to transact with money. So in order to be able to give people the tools to exist in the economies that we have today, so that they aren't totally isolated and just living in this like, losing resources, but to have both options, right? Both entry points and both ways of interacting with like maybe the wider global economy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the Commons Stack approach. I mean, we are taking commons, which are normally just social organizations, and injecting a economic component to align incentives on the economic plane. But we recognize that all the planes, the incentives on all of the different planes need to be aligned, not just economic.
Yeah, and that brings me flawlessly to the next question, which is a combination of a question by Sean in our chat and also by James. So Sean was asking, like, can the Commons Stack only be used for nonprofits? And James was asking a similar thing in the sense, like, can the Commons Stack fund anything? So, for example, cleaning up of a beach filled with rubbish would be good, but cleaning a forest of trees would maybe not be so good. So how do we deal with this? How do we see this?
So our scope is really to focus less. Obviously, the components that we use can be used for anything anyone wants. We're actually really focusing on the designs and less on the implementations. We're going to create reference implementations, but our designs are going to be focused on a specific type of use case, which is really cause focused, even less so project focused. People can use our system for projects, but the issue there is it's very likely to become a security. And if you do that, I would say continuous organizations is really geared for your project. If you instead are more focused about like gathering a community of altruistic people who care about a cause and solving issues around that cause, then the Commons Stack, that's our real design. And I think that there's a huge advantage in using it for nonprofit systems, because for-profit systems, they already have incentive alignment on the business and the economic plane. So it's not really, I don't feel like it's as much of a game changer. The nonprofit world has a horrible misalignment of incentives in the economic plane. And people have to overcome that misalignment of incentives to support the nonprofit. So if we just have more opportunities in that space, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Z, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so everything Griff said, plus recognizing that the design of the Commons Stack is a sort of adapter pattern or like interface between a common system and an economized system. So we're kind of building a bubble around a commons or a bubble around a nonprofit community that allows it to interact externally with this world full of profit maximizers without being consumed or destroyed by those profit maximizers. But in a sense, it's aimed at protecting the essence of that sustainable, value creating, not value extracting or aggregating entity. So you can think of it as a little force field meant to help allow this sort of commons exist inside of an otherwise economized world.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I'll now go to a question because we have a lot of live questions coming in, but we also had some questions in advance. So because we haven't really heard Coach B. Bernd talk, I have a question here for him. So the question is, so the Common Stack Association has been created in Switzerland, and the question is, how has your experience been in creating a nonprofit in Switzerland? Is this a process that can be replicated easily and open sourced? I would love to know a little bit more about this, and so that also nonprofit DAOs can better understand legal implications of what they're doing and how difficult or easy it is to register as a nonprofit.
So first of all, Switzerland has done a great job in adopting cryptocurrencies. So they really made clear what are the boundaries, what are the limits of using cryptocurrencies, and creating projects based on cryptocurrencies. So that helped a lot. On the other side, Switzerland is great because it has this sort of entity that we also use, the association, which is a very community-driven organization. So it really is based on the people that are in there for the same cause. So it's mostly used in sports, for example, that people come together and they do have a board, they do have representatives, but these only execute what the board or what the community decides on. So they're just the operational part. And but the community has the say in everything. So this is, to me, comes very, very close to what a DAO or what the philosophy behind blockchain is, that it's mostly community driven. And the great thing is you have an entity here that is recognized, that's accepted, that is integrated into the whole ecosystem. You can open a bank account with an association, and you can do business with it. And it's not just non-profit. It's maybe you would rather say not for profit, because if you think about the biggest association in the world is from Switzerland. It's called FIFA. It's the World Soccer Federation, and they make billions. But they all the money, all the revenue they generate is distributed again amongst the members of their association. So it's and a lot of it goes also towards other people within the organization. So blockchain would be really, really useful to trust them more, maybe, but that's another topic. But I think that this type of entities is really, really beneficial for creating DAOs at the end. The only sort of centralized approach, or still in component integrated, is that you need a representative. You need a person to really be approachable. To open a bank account, for example, you need one person to do this in regards to the association. So that's the only topic I would say is missing. But if we could somehow find a way to resolve even that, then it can be a DAO. And a year ago, or even more, Sebastian Bürgel from Validity Labs even created smart contracts that you can govern an association in Switzerland through smart contracts. So it's already so almost tokenized, I would say. And replicating it is possible. Actually, we've done this process many times already. I've created quite a few associations, and thanks to Jordi Barlina and Griff Green, they've paid the first fee to legal advice on this, and we've taken the framework that we've set up back then for IDEN 3 and just amended this to any use case you want to build, any purpose you want to create. And so this is you can replicate this, but you need a Swiss a person living in a Swiss resident to be on the board. That's the only prerequisite you need to have this done in Switzerland. But if you look into other countries, you might find it it's almost similar situation for associations. You just I mean, look into this for your own country, and you might find a similar solution to this.
Mm-hmm. Just know, well, that's a fantastic answer. Know that there is the question that people would love to see a blog post by you on this, Bernd. So like what your learnings are, and so that how they can contact you and so on. They can probably contact you via Twitter if they have questions on this as well. And Griff, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah, we're gonna make legal blog posts. It's in the works. Right now we're working on the white paper, and that just is taking precedent over pushing our legal explainer, which I'm drafting, and we'll of course have Coach B review. And one of the things I want to add about our legal situation and our strategy is that we're really trying to have the minimal footprint with the maximum benefit for our users. And what we've found is that we can actually allow everybody who contributes to the Common Stack to become a member of the Common Stack association. And so that way they're legally protected in like some, I don't know, I'm from the States, so it's a very litigious place. And there's a lot of fears out there about DAOs being general partnerships. And I wouldn't call the Common Stack a DAO, but I would say that if you don't have a clear like legal representation, like a legal foothold, then there are some like scary things that people worry about. So we found a way where as long as you contribute one DAI to the association, you will become a member of the association and you don't have any legal worries. And I just think that's super cool.
Yeah, and so that is actually also a question that we had in the chat from, I think that's Angela from Token Engineering. So we have this, you pay one DAI and you become a member of our Trusted Seed. And so her question is like, what are the next steps for the Trusted Seed and what do you expect of members of the Trusted Seed?
Well, I can say that members of the Trusted Seed need to put skin in the game, so that we know that they are altruistically minded and actually care about the funding of public goods. So the next step is really just growing the Trusted Seed. We need a wide base of people to really make this stuff work. We don't want it to be an insider club. We want it to be a fair distribution of vetted, curated people that we know and we trust are not in it to make a bunch of money. Because honestly, there will be an opportunity for Trusted Seed members to make profits by supporting this organization. But we need to, I think it's important that we make sure the Trusted Seed is a large group and a trusted group. So it's just going to take us time to gather everyone together. And once we get enough people there, then we will start our actual fundraising round. And that's when the Trusted Seed has more action. And they can start to donate to the Common Stack and receive C-Stack tokens for their donations, which will allow them to then help us initiate future commons.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just wanted to say as well that that C-Stack tokens, when you're a member of the Trusted Seed, C-Stack tokens act as your reputation more or less in that Trusted Seed. So again, with the skin in the game, if you have a larger financial contribution to the build of the Common Stack, or if you've put a lot of time into building Common Stack components. We also have the Praise Bot, which we just launched about a month ago now. If you're in our Telegram channel, you probably see the praise train coming through town every now and again. And we try to praise all of the work and the unpaid contributions to all of the wonderful things that have gone on at the Common Stack so far, from hackathons to people coming out of the blue and helping us with comms and articles and strategic risk mitigation and everything else.
Yeah, so definitely also for people watching this who are not in our chat right now, please join us. So we'll also, like below in the description, there is a link to the chat, but we'll be adding some more links to some of the things that we've been referencing, amongst other the video of Elon Musk, because people have been asking for that one. And so
Right.
talking
about you wanted to
go ahead.
On the Trusted Seed.
Go ahead.
I want really important is that the notion of reputation and contribution to the Common Stack is multidimensional. So there's not like a one notion. We've got the Praise Bot. We have future designs on potentially using source cred. We have the idea that you have a membership, which is an identity that is mapped to the contract. You can have different types of measures of contribution. So there's not like a one-dimensional reputation God's eye score. It's more that we're keeping track of a variety of things, from financial contribution to labor contributions to basically as much as we can, so that there's sort of a rich, even though it's digital, a rich, underlying representation of participation. And that helps avoid the sort of scary things that come from, purely tokenized one-dimensional things where people aggregate sort of that one dimension of power and then exercise it over everyone else. By keeping the notions of contribution diverse, we're also giving ourselves a lot more freedom to value each other in different ways. And we'll have to discover the right kinds of metrics for the right kinds of decisions, but it's actually a big distinction between a sort of one-dimensional or highly prescriptive way of measuring contribution that I think leads to failure modes we've seen. And so we're actually being very diligent about avoiding those pitfalls.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information on the Trusted Seed in a Medium post. We really rely on the Trusted Seed. It's a major component for our system to make it work. And if you have any other questions about that, I would refer to the post.
Okay, and talking actually, because Z was saying things, and that brought me to the next question, was saying on how it's important to have this diversity, and it's not just a financial thing, it's also your personal contributions that count. Talking about diversity, we have heard most of the men speaking now. So actually now I have a question for Lorelei, and it's actually exactly about this. So we have a question that we got from Sam, and it is about how we can avoid having too much bias within, because we're building this, and so we can have bias within the common stack. So I'll just read a bit of the question here. When quite large groups of people, such as women that represent 51% of the population, are sometimes underrepresented. I'd like to know what you think about that, and if you have already thought on ways to increase the diversity in the community. This is important also in the context of the commons and so on. So how do you see this?
It's a great question that I've thought a lot about. And I don't know, I've seen many projects and even even governing bodies and all types of entities in our world these days really focus on this diversity topic, and really looking at it from an angle of how can we get the people at the table? We just want to have their voices, at the table and included. And in some ways, I think people's efforts to do that often end up being just the checking of a box. And so for me, I'm really thinking about less about how do we pull those people to our table, and more about how do we open up a chair, and how do we make that chair comfortable for that person. And if this isn't a space that naturally attracts people of any exploited identity group or oppressed identity group, if it's not naturally attracting that and creating the habitat for that, then honestly, that space doesn't deserve to have those people there. And always exploited people's voices are very often tokenized, right? And asking people to come and just sit at the table just to be, your quota. And so for me, I'm as a woman in crypto, I'm not out there running around trying to pull other women into crypto. I don't see that as the best way. And I would rather focus on how do we make this a space that's actually, welcoming and inviting, and somewhere where people like that would be valued. I think the other day we were talking about it, and I had this analogy of okay, if you're I want kids and I want to have, 10 children and I want to have a long, happy life with great kids and, they all become the president or something. You could just adopt 10 kids and like all of a sudden have 10 babies in your house and you're like, there, I did it. And, like maybe 2 of them like die because they fell down the stairs because you didn't baby-proof the house. But hey, at least you like checked the box of you adopted those 10 kids. But like, are you really, are you really calling it in? Have you made this environment where that's welcome? And so like with that criticism, I think there's really tangible ways we can do that. And we've been talking a lot about care work lately. Like another term for it is like feminized labor or gendered labor, emotional labor, lots of, the type of work that often gets pushed onto women, which is like hiring and HR and administration and all of these types of tasks, and just valuing that more. And putting like a higher importance on that in our internal culture. And something I've seen us do really well lately is really valuing a healthy team. I come from conflict resolution systems. I was a restorative justice facilitator and really studied decentralized conflict resolution. And that's one of the things that, like when you show by the way you spend your time in a team, that it's important to, like you take the time to have a healthy work environment and sit and talk in conflict with each other and interact in a healthy way. That's one of the things that is natural and super present in communities of women, of people of color, people that aren't just in this super linear, like, capitalizing like business world. I don't know, that's one way we do it, but we're working on it, and we all are.
I think it's one of those issues that's never going to go away. It's not like, okay, we got that check, now we can move on to other things. It's something that we continuously need to be thinking about and planning for. And I think that's, fits right in with the goal of the Common Stack is valuing things that are undervalued. Whether those are public goods or contributions from underrepresented ethnicities, genders, I think it fits right in with the Common Stack vision, and it's I think it's something that's really important to everyone working on our team.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also like we have our trusted seed, and we want really a very diverse group of experts there, and hopefully they will keep on giving us lots of feedback so that we can find this balance that is just crucial. Then I have a question coming here, the first thing you talked about earlier, Griff, about the fundraising that we are going to start soon, which is our iteration 1, and iteration 1 is the building of the augmented bonding curve. So we have a question here from Rasmus, who's asking, could you please go, so it's a question for you or for Jeff, could you please go through a very basic example of a bonding curve life journey, step by step, in a way that everyday commons people would understand?
Yeah, you have this pulled up, right?
I am getting it right now.
I mean, the first step before you, if you're trying to do this for a commons, the first step isn't the bonding curve, right? The first step is building a community to hatch a bonding curve. And so you'll want to, of course, like figure out what your mission, your vision is, figure out who you want to sit at the table. You have to really focus on building a solid culture of awesome people that want to work together to actually change the world, right? That's what this tool is used for. And once you have that critical mass of solid people and funding, then you can dive into the bonding curve. I'll let Jeff dive in.
Yeah, and indeed, I think it's also the question is indeed mainly like we can show that we have a simulation here that we're going to show, but maybe start, if it's possible, Jeff, try to do it with like some sort of a tangible example, like what does this community do, so that people can really understand what this is.
Sure. So the example that we've been going with quite a bit is a trash cleanup community. So this could be a global trash cleanup community that is deciding to come together, and they want to pool their money to create an economic system. Think of it like the Uber of trash cleanup. So if we look at on the left-hand side here, we can see all of the parameters by which we can set up the augmented bonding curve. So the Hatch Tribute is how much of the funds from the initial raise go into the pool to pay for work in that community. We have the Hatch price and the post-Hatch price. That's the price of the native token, the Trash Hero coin in this example. The exit tribute is sort of a speculation tax. Whenever people leave this economy, they pay a small bit into the pool, and this creates a continuous funding mechanism for that community. And the vesting curve is a protection on the initial hatchers. We don't want people to come in, and obviously if you set the hatch price at 10 cents, this is when you purchase into that community, you purchase the token at 10 cents. And when your curve goes live to the public, it's worth 30 cents. So this all has some quite complex mathematics behind it, which you can check out in our Augmented Bonding Curve deep dive article if you're so inclined. But the vesting curve is basically protecting that community pool of funds from people who want to just check out and cash in, more or less.
Pump and dump.
Yeah.
And you can see when we run the simulation here, we have some different outcomes. The green line is the price of the community token. The yellow line is the floor price, which follows the vesting curve. And the blue line, most importantly, is the continuously accumulating funds in that community. So you can see this community, under these initial assumptions, have raised just shy of 2 million DAI to clean up beaches around the world. So this is the power of the augmented bonding curve as sort of an economic cell wall. You know, if we're thinking of this in biomimetic analogies, we're creating microeconomies that are liquid to other economies, like a cell wall. So the augmented bonding curve is the boundary between that economy and any other economy that you choose to participate in.
Oops. Okay, great. So for anyone who wants to go a little bit deeper in this, there's indeed, we have a Medium post on the augmented bonding curve, but that's very technical. If you want to try it out for yourself, this simulation, you can just go to commonstack.org/ABC and you can do this simulation for yourself. And there are more articles coming in the future. There's for people who are just coming from the Commons context and are not a developer whatsoever and want to more see what the bigger picture is about. We'll also be adding the link to a presentation that Jeff gave earlier, and that paints this bigger picture very well. So we'll be adding that in the comments. And then we have another question here. So that was a question about by James. So and it's linked also, I guess, to it came up in the context of the previous question on diversity. Would there be mechanisms in the Commons stack that encourage/value a healthy team? So it's linked to the governance, and it's also probably polycentric governance, and probably also to some of the mechanisms that we have in place that we mentioned before. But I don't know who wants to tell a little bit more about this.
Well, I wouldn't say that we have any plans in our minimum viable commons to incentivize some of these softer skills. One of the projects that we're really excited about is SourceCred, because they do an amazing job at including some of these more qualitative measurements that are difficult to quantify. And but that's just, we have to cut the scope around someplace. Actually, part of our strategy is generally to keep the scope really small and build commons that have very few features, because we want to focus on the modeling and putting all this stuff in CAD, open sourcing those models and allowing other people to innovate on top of it. It's another way that we can also be a little more inclusive and not impose our own implementation designs on other groups, that other groups can sit at the table and fork what we already have, which is just designs, and then start implementing after tweaking those designs. And hopefully we'll have all of these playbooks that they can use to do that in a safe way.
This goes back to the discussion of first principles and generally modularity of design components. So we are absolutely not building things that only work with themselves. Everything about what we're doing is finding the bridges between the technical and the social. And so where places we see there are gaps or weaknesses in the stack, so to speak, we're filling it in. But everything is design level plus reference implementation. So in a sense, reference architecture plus reference implementation of modular components. So when we come across an awesome project like SourceCred, rather than build that component, we make sure that we are thinking about how what we are doing would integrate with that and looking at ways to achieve the maximum set of fundamental design patterns from which an individual project can build what they need to facilitate their community, which will necessarily vary widely.
Mm-hmm. And actually, there is a question now that another extra question coming in, which was linked to the previous point when Jeff was giving the demo of the bonding curve, and more technical in a way thing is, so the liquid point of bonding curves is excellent. There is still the question of how to attract funds continuously. Could you go in a little bit more deeper in that point? Is a question from Benjamin.
Can I take it? So the big goal here is that we are effective. So let's just be straight. Right? We have a token bonding curve which is under collateralized. That's just how token bonding curves work. And this token's value is based off of the future value that the commons. It's really supported by the future value of donations that the commons can bring in. So the people who are hatch the commons are incentivized to actually do a good job, make a lot of impact on the public good that they are trying to fund. If it's Trash Hero Commons, they're trying to make sure that they support projects that actually make an impact on on cleaning up beaches or whatever cleanups they want to focus on. So if they do a good job at that, there are people that are already donating to that cause. And those people will have a choice. They could continue donating to the nonprofit that they like to support. And when they do that, they believe they gain value in the non-economic plane, right? They say, oh, I'm going to have an impact and I'm going to change the world with this donation. But they lose value in the economic plane. Their donation is just a complete loss, right? Maybe they get to deduct it from their income, right? And pay less taxes.
And
But so now, right, if the Commons does a really good job at making an impact, and the person hears about this as an option, instead of donating to the nonprofit they're already supporting, they will actually tell that nonprofit, hey, look at this really cool project called the Commons, and they will, the Trash Hero Commons, and they will buy Trash Hero Commons tokens, and with their donation, receiving a financial instrument in return, and then use their tokens to actually vote to allocate funding to that same nonprofit they were already supporting. So now, instead of it being an absolute loss when they give donations, they have an opportunity to be rewarded for their curation and their support of this organization.
And I think there's a lot of, not misunderstanding around augmented bonding curves, or bonding curves in general. They're not magic money generating machines. We definitely need value produced by these commons in order to have them survive. And this is the same with any business in the stock market, right? If they're not producing value, they're probably going to go bust at some point. So I've pulled up our diagram of the cyber-physical commons here. And you can see on the right-hand side, we have these material outputs. Now, I mean, this is very generic, but for the Trash Hero Commons, that might be clean beaches. For a crypto project, that might be open source code. Whatever that material output is value produced by that commons, by that economy, and that drives potentially further investment, just in the same way that value produced by a corporation spurs more people to buy that corporation's equity on the market. So there's definitely a large amount of, how much value is being produced by this commons that drives more interest in, hey, these people are solving a real world problem, and how much is trash cleanup worth to you? Maybe I would buy, Trash Hero coin until it's worth $500 a coin or $1,000 a coin. So you really have this subjectivity of the value produced by these commons, which I mean is innate in, humans are messy, subjective creatures. So we're just trying to capture some of that and use it to feed funding and that value back into these commons so they can continue doing the good work without having all this lost opportunity cost, having to seek donations all the time or continually write grants for funding and all that.
I think, I mean, there's a persisting fact that's a sad thing, that there is good work going on, really great work going on that's not valued. And so, I mean, like, I hear you guys saying this, right? Like, oh, if they just do really good work, then they will get the funding. And I guess I have a little bit more of maybe a cynical viewpoint on that, from like coming from a lot of activist communities that were doing amazing work and not getting recognized. But what I've seen is that a lot of them fail to reach sustainability and like safety because of either the legal structures that are available to them don't fit their case or are corrupt, or the banking systems and the ways of transacting with money as an organization don't fit them or are corrupt or not safe. And so just the idea that we could provide another option, a third way of being an organization, being a community that cares for a public good and for a resource, just to create another option for that, for people who don't have access to like safe like nonprofit legal structures or safe banking, depending on where they're at. Just that they would have another option of being an organization that can transact and work in this world. At least increases the possibility of success there. But there is always good work that's being done that isn't,
Yeah, another missing step is actually legibility of that work to others. So a lot of the times the value is really visible locally, like the power of what's being done. But then if the funding or the support is coming from far away in space or time, you lose that feedback loop. And so a big part of what this does is provide a sort of nervous system for that. So we're not necessarily saying that every little thing has to be logged, but having a proposal engine, having the visibility into the decision-making process, can result in basically more trust in the sensing of the completion and of the value of the work. So make it easier for people to see and therefore support that valuable labor.
Yeah, and yeah. I just want to be real with you guys. I mean, the financial system has this, we have this kind of lie that we live within. Uh-oh, they're saying. Uh-oh. Sorry, I've been watching Money Masters too much. But no, there's this lie that people make money by producing a good, taking a raw material and improving it, or providing a service, and then selling that service for more than it costs to do it, and extracting some profit there. And honestly, that's just not how people make money in the current world. People make money by creating financial instruments, and this is how businesses raise their capital. Every fintech startup that's ever existed in the last 20 years has basically lost money out the get-go, and has really been relying on this idea of being able to create a financial instrument. And so they raise money from their investors, and they just burn that capital to provide value that hopefully one day will attract extra customers. I mean, Amazon is my favorite example. They've only ever made $25 billion in profits, and yet Jeff Bezos has $130 billion. Doesn't even make sense, right? And how are nonprofits supposed to compete in this world? How are they supposed to survive? Like how are they supposed to, if Amazon is going to be polluting the ocean constantly, and they have the ability to raise capital by creating a financial instrument, how are nonprofits going to compete with that advantage? And
what's the financial instrument they create?
Amazon stock.
Stocks.
Yeah, they create Amazon stocks that represent the future value of Amazon. And I believe we have the ability to allow nonprofits to actually tokenize the future value of their donations and quantify that in the economic plane in a way that's never been able to be done before. And now now they can raise capital the same way a tech startup does. And that will allow them to make huge impact and huge strides that they just can't make right now on shoestring budgets. Z, did you have something to say?
Future value of their donations. I mean, you're talking about the future value of that thing. And I think these things that have been externalized and then are abused to produce profits in this traditional financial sector, until we actually find a way to wrap the sort of forms of physical and social value with structures that the capitalist construct recognizes, you can't adequately protect them. You can't adequately internalize the externalities that are being imposed on them. So here we're looking at ways of building these, wrappers that match the sort of, financial system on the outside, but they match the real value creation in the social and physical system on the inside. And it's that ability to build interaction patterns or adapter patterns between the two that are going to allow us to protect those forms of value. And I think that, for me, it's important. It's not just about donations value. It's about the real non-financial value and our ability to give it a footprint in that financialized world so it's not so easily extracted.
Yeah, so like both those answers kind of answer one of the questions I think that we have in the channel, which is from, I think it's from Andreas Morgan GR. And he was asking, like, what are the two biggest benefits for NGOs and small grassroots groups? So I think it's the fact that it's the non-extraction of the value. That is definitely one of the big ones. Is there another one that you could concisely say, like, this is
coordination? Coordination between groups that are usually competing for donors or economic input of one way or another. You see it in Bitcoin, you see it in Ethereum, you see this token maximalism, right? It's because people's incentives are aligned. If everyone who cares about a cause holds the same token, now they're naturally aligned around supporting the value of that token. And so this is a very powerful coordination mechanism that we've seen in the crypto system countless times. It's crypto tribalism, right? And what if you could be a Save the Amazon maximalist? What if you could be a Trash Hero maximalist? I only work for Trash Hero coins, right? I mean, this is the kind of opportunity we have to see. And you see Bitcoiners and Ethereum projects all uniting around standards and coordinating together outside of the digital realm because of this incentive alignment. So that's I think probably second to raising capital. I think it is the number 2 big plus.
Yeah, I mean, markets are the largest decentralized coordinator that we know of. We have global markets that coordinate. No one told you what job to get or how to match your skills to the market. You just follow an incentive pattern. So now we're enabling this to move beyond the for-profit world and into causes and things that we actually care about as humans, rather than just more things to consume, more things to produce. We're really kind of realigning that and allowing us to value the things that we actually value.
So yeah, and a question there on that second point of on collaboration as a group, as a cooperative, and so on. We have a question from someone called First Name Second Name, and that question is game theory is how to deal with conflicts or cooperation in commons. So yeah, I'm gonna rephrase that. The question is mainly like how game theory plays a role in how we see collaboration working in the commons stack.
I mean, I don't know, Z, would you be interested in taking that one?
Sure. I don't think of it particularly game theoretically. I mean, I do a lot of work with game theory, but I think the challenge with game theory is that it poses the problems in this sort of homo economicus mindset. And I think, one of the biggest challenges here is to simultaneously recognize the sort of, economic ROI paradigm and sort of non-measurable social value, sort of humans as sensors for what value is in the same context. So what I would say is happening here is that we're building tools to help make sure that that trade-off is manageable, that it doesn't default to the homo economicus, which actually means that we are using game theoretic principles as only one piece of our sense making, and that we are sort of acknowledging that there will be actors that behave according to that, but that we are not assuming that actors can only act according to that. And I mean, I could probably go off on way longer of a tangent than we have time for, but it's pretty important to understand that we can't break out of the paradigm we're in using the paradigm that we're in.
Okay. A question here. So on what the name Aragon has popped up a few times in the chat. So by the way, people keep the questions coming. It's fantastic to see all this interaction. And so one of the questions about Aragon is so what Aragon is doing with Aragon fundraising. I guess that's mostly what the question was about. Like, can you like say something about like a potential interaction with what they are doing and what the differences are?
Yeah, Aragon fundraising. Okay, so first off, let me just say that the Common Stack actually started as an Aragon dev team. We were the Aragon DAC. We didn't end up going through the whole Flock process, but we did. That was our original plan, was to basically push all of this on Aragon. That was before we really got in touch with Zargum, though. And Zargum blew our minds with CAD and how important the designs are, especially for token bonding curves. One of the things that we really want to focus on is being like blockchain agnostic and really implementation agnostic. Aragon is killing it. I mean, they already have the bonding curves on their platform live on mainnet, and they already have conviction voting on kind of a local net that's in process. And so like that community has really been diving into the Common Stack more than any others. But their implementation of the bonding curve, and so they have a huge leg up on potentially being our reference implementations. However, we want to make sure that we are totally implementation agnostic. We're going to have, when we actually do build the augmented bonding curve, we're going to put it out there for for anyone in the ecosystem to bid on taking that job. So it might be done on DAOstack, it might be done using Colony, who knows? Maybe it's just a roll your own and it's attached to a Moloch DAO. We'll see. But the main differences between what Aragon does with fundraising and what we do is that they have a tap. So the tap is how they move money from the collateral pool to the funding pool, what we would call the funding pool. In their case, it just goes to an address, and that address could be a funding pool, it could be a DAO. And there's just a constant stream from the collateral pool to the funding pool. And what this does is it actually is continuously lowering the price of the token. If nothing else changes, there is a constant draining of the collateral pool. We don't really like that method, and Z, you could maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because it doesn't perfectly align the incentives between all actors in the system. And we find that the implementing what we call an exit tribute and a hatch tribute to raise funds for the funding pool. Gives you a better way to bootstrap the system, so you can get a decent amount of capital up front by bulk, instead of having one person buy a token at a time, kind of doing a big bulk buy at the beginning and giving everyone the average price of that token, but then having the hatch tribute, which will take a percentage of the money raised at the beginning and throw it in the funding pool so you can get started right away and actually start making an impact. And then having a continuous stream of funding from when people burn their token by sending it to the bonding curve. So people will sell their token effectively, but only get, let's say, 90% of the funds generated from the bonding curve, and 10% would go then to support the public good. And of course, people left would then get to decide how to spend that money that's going into the funding pool. The person who burns the money, they don't have a say because they're leaving the ecosystem. The goal is to align incentives so that when people exit, and they're effectively hurting the system because everyone else's tokens lose value. So all the participants are lose when someone leaves. But then all the participants also win because they get to spend the money that's generated when the person leaves.
And I just wanted to say one more thing, that there may be some differences between Aragon fundraising and the augmented bonding curve in terms of specific mechanisms. But we definitely see the Commons Stack library, we want it to be functional for every use case. So we would love to see the tap mechanism as a different funding mechanism in the Commons Stack library at some point in the future, because you could probably compose, of course, with the right system modeling with CAD, an exit tribute and the tap mechanism in the same bonding curve if that suited your use case. So it really comes down to the system design and modeling and holistically simulating in CAD to make sure that it suits your system specification.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then I have one more question that I see here in the channel. So if you have other questions, type them now, or you will have to wait until the next AMA. The question that I still see is also linked to, I don't think that we really covered that one completely. So it's more the technical one on how are we going to develop this. You said that we want to be blockchain agnostic, Griff, but what is going to be the first step? So the question from Doga was, will we develop our own chain, develop on our own chain just like Aragon did, or are we going to use one of the existing ones? Is that already cleared out or not completely?
We have a clear plan on what we're going to do, and we're not starting our own blockchain. We're not creating our own transferable token of value. The Commons Stack just isn't doing that. We are creating a reputation token called the CStack token that represents your reputation in the trusted seed and will give you access to projects that do launch tokens. But we ourselves, we're actually more focused on building designs that people will be able to fork and use to build their own tokens. And those tokens may be on their own chain. Maybe they'll be on Ethereum. Maybe they'll be on EOS. I'd love to see some on Holochain too. I'm excited to see people innovate off of our designs. It's pretty obvious that we are an Ethereum-focused community within the Commons Stack. That's where we have our roots, and that's where and honestly, that's where all the action is in smart contracts anyway. So I fully expect everything to be going on either Ethereum mainnet or XDAI or some sort of sidechain. I do think that it will be better off. My favorite place for it to be would be XDAI, just because the gas costs on mainnet are a little serious, a little too much for nonprofits. But we'll see where the people want it to be implemented. A lot of this will also come from feedback from CStack token holders. Z?
I add, it's breaking up. Yeah, I would like to add that this is absolutely the difference between the design, the reference architectures, and the reference implementations. So our primary focus being in the reference architecture level, the algorithm design and the modules. We actually do have a lot of ongoing discussions with other groups. For example, the Economic Space Agency is also looking at things that are very much about providing alternatives to the existing sort of economic paradigm. And so there have been discussions and collaborations on the design patterns outside of the Ethereum community. And so the best way to think about this is that because of the Ethereum experience of the team, reference implementations are going to likely be in Ethereum flavor for some time, but that we're immediately prepared to collaborate with people in other ecosystems to help them make reference implementations of our reference architectures in there. Take that feedback and use it to help make sure that the designs are truly platform agnostic. Because there's, back to the diversity question, it's a different kind of diversity, but we're trying to encourage and involve people from the communities outside of the Ethereum community to make sure that we're not accidentally being Ethereum flavored as a result of our own built-in biases.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then I have, I'm gonna ask Bernd a question, because I'm like looking at the list of which questions, because many people also asked us questions when they signed up to become a member of the Trusted Seed. By the way, if you want to do this, you can do this by going to commonstack.org/apply if you haven't yet, so that you can become a part of this awesome community. And so when you do this, there is a question, there are a few questions there, and there's a reference to the Common Stack statutes. And the question there was, who are the president and the representatives signed into the Common Stack statutes? Who are they? What do they do?
So we have a board of 3 people that's very centralized. So even a decentralized project has to start centralized. And the board exists of Lorelei, Jeff, and myself. And but as I mentioned before, we execute. We don't. We can make decisions like any other member, but at the end, our vote counts as much as any member's vote, and the outcome of the votes then will be executed by us. And this could be a very broad topic where we sort of have maybe authority over something and can do something if the outcome is what people voted on, or it's very specific. That depends on the topic that we're looking at. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think so. I do have another question for you. And it's linked to, we mentioned in the Trusted Seed application that people could, we asked them if they would be open to KYC. And so there was a proposal here, I think we need to give a little bit of a clarification there. But the question there was, can we identify details with separate burner digital identities which get one-time anonymously linked to Mint CStack reputation and no longer re-identifiable except via de-identified social graphs such as Bright ID or something? That's the complete question.
This is Pucci's question. I chatted with him a little bit about it, and he said he was being very creative.
Fantastic.
In this question, I loved it because it's honestly, it's like, I don't even understand what that identity verification system that he laid out is. And I think that's because I have a lot to learn, and he's like an awesome, really intelligent person on this stuff. So I don't know. I would default to someone who knows technicalities of identity options a little more.
Well, it's let me just first answer maybe the KYC part and what we have, why we have something in there like this. So in general, it's the topic you want to interact with, or the entities you want to interact with. So if you want to have money at the end, or a currency based on fiat currency in your bank account at the end, then the bank will ask you for KYC. And that's sort of the basic solution that we can that a DAO can integrate if they want to. So if a DAO wants to integrate a KYC process, we will have the opportunity to do this. if I don't know these identity systems, and maybe Griff or whoever has knowledge of that can answer. If you have another use case where this is important to have, that you have another way of identifying a wallet address or anything, then any solution can be put in place. This is a modular system, so the DAO could decide what they want to integrate. We've sort of been very, I always say we've been holier than the Pope on the legal system in Switzerland. That's the basis we've based it on. If you have other systems that you want to cooperate or integrate with, then you should sort of do that connection. But maybe Griff, you can explain on the identity system here.
Yeah, I want to say that we actually require. I mean, we have a trusted seed, and it's important that every commons has a trusted group of hatchers, and so there, in a way, needs to be an identity system. I am part of the BrightID DAO and an advisor to BrightID. I'm also one of the people who initiated IDEN3. And I think identity systems are extremely important. I didn't get into crypto to do plutocracy. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't think anyone that's not in it for the money is excited about plutocracy. So, however, those decentralized identity platforms I would say that they're not quite ready for prime time, and we needed to cut our scope. So we're basically doing more of a community-oriented identity system where we just check in on people. For the Trusted Seed, Lorelei and I and the whole team really just make sure that we know who everyone is. The old way, you know, where you actually just check up on people and
Talk to them.
yeah, you talk to them and you say, oh yeah, okay, you're cool, you're in, you know, and of course there's also like a level of reputation that we can let people in. Maybe we don't know them and don't trust them very much and they don't want to talk to us. If there's no red flags, we can still let them in to a lesser degree. And so, but every hatch needs to make sure that they have a group of trusted people that come in. One of the cool things that we can do though, because as the Common Stack, we're not going to have a bank account, or we're going to hopefully not have to have a bank account. And we're also not launching a token of value. We don't have to do KYC, and we're doing our own social, like know your CStack token holder, but it's not we're not asking for IDs. And however, people that use our system may want to, so we have to recognize that. And actually, Coach B, I'd love if you talked about the reusable KYC process that we are going to implement, that we're excited about trying to make life easier for projects that do want to do KYC. This is for CStack token holders. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so the idea is that we found a partner in Mount Pelerin, which is also a Swiss-based project, and they can offer a KYC process that you can sort of modular integrate into any process, and if you create a DAO based on the Common Stack framework, then this could be a module that you add to your framework, and if you want to, and so this allows you to do a KYC process to based on the Swiss regulators. So it's mostly works for the Swiss regulator, and then you can easily talk to any bank and confirm that you've done your process and that you can even transfer crypto into fiat into a bank account if you want to, if that's your goal. But as Griff said, that's not everyone's goal, and if you stay in crypto, you don't need to have the KYC process.
Okay, so we have two more questions in the channel, and then we have a third one that we also still wanted to answer. So I'll first go to a question that James still asked. Like, okay, so hypothetically speaking, there is an awesome local team and they hope to obtain traditional grants for initial funding. And I assume he means like they want to start their own commons. Where do they go next? How does it all start?
You want to take it?
Yeah. So we're still in the R&D phase of the Common Stack. So we've done a lot of modeling. We've done a lot of the mathematics from first principles. We've simulated and tested our ideas. The next step for us is to raise funds to actually go out and finish the R&D. I mean, it's surprising the amount of work that goes into the R&D and modeling these systems, especially the first time. I mean, once we do it once, those designs can be used over and over and customized quite easily. But doing it the first time takes a lot of research and design. And then, of course, going out and building these reference implementations that can then be taken and used by communities. So in terms of timeline on that, we're also playing with the crypto market. This is a tricky time to raise funds after 2 years of bear market. But we're very optimistic that this technology is so essential for the space that we're going to be moving forward with the fundraise in the coming months. And we're excited to get building these components for everyone to use.
Mm-hmm. And that is actually linked to the next question as well, I guess, because James' question was like, how will this work if a commons when commons can start being built? And this question from Rasmus is also related to this. So from your point of view, how mature are the technologies you are building? Is it only Ethereum tech savvy people that can play with it? Are you ready to bring this to the mainstream? If not, why? So I think you already kind of answered that, Jeff, but maybe someone else still wants to add something to it.
Yeah, let's come on, guys. I mean, people can't even use Compound or Uniswap. Like, you want to dive into the commons and conviction voting? I mean, we're going to make it as easy as we can, but it's not going to just be perfect to use for any nonprofit out the gate. We have to recognize that and be okay with that. It's going to take many iterations to get to a place where we have the model, the actual architecture works, that we have aligned the incentives properly and have results to prove that, and we have a model, we have a reference implementation, we gather data from that first reference implementation, other people start using it, and we gather more data, we improve the models, we improve the implementations, we try again, and eventually also there's a little bit of help from the universe, from meta transactions and better wallets and better tools to interact with this crypto space that I hope to see, and I'm excited to see. But it's going to take some time to really break into the mainstream where non-technical users can actually have an impact with this. That's why. Well, let me just say that's why our strategy is to start with token engineers and probably stay in the open source software space for a while. Really focus on public goods that have people that know how to use this stuff, so we don't run into those barriers right out the gate.
Mm-hmm. So you want to be, yeah, see, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there's two separate streams between the sort of, actually really three, when we talk about design and we talk about implementations, and then we talk about there's sort of another level of implementations related to specific commons, which are the actual like applications that you interact with, which don't necessarily need to be hyper decentralized when they're community dependent. So you have the lowest level depth of sort of design patterns, mechanisms that align incentives, and you've got the sort of Web3 level implementations that provide some backboning, but then you'll also often end up with some community-specific applications that are, there may be some traditional Web2 elements. Like there's a lot that can be done once you get just the most basic piece, say, even if it's just an Aragon organization, followed by the set of people and software that interacts with it. I think it's, I don't want to ramble about this too much, but the point is that once you contextualize, you can start making individual trade-offs about what is actually trusted, and you can have some conventional things that clean up the UX and make it possible for people to get to a mature enough product to use in real life relatively quickly. And the reference case I wanted to bring up is just work being done by the Red Cross on community currencies that's been live in the Proof of Authority network actually for many months, even a year. And while it's still technically a POC, and it's technically really out there and people are using it and they are learning from it and they're doing all the stuff Griff just said, and people do have it in their real hands and they aren't crypto people. So you got to be like clear about the layers. Yeah, we have a long haul view, but that doesn't mean nothing gets to anyone ever in the meantime. It just means that we understand there's like the fast phase, the medium phase.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the slow phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's cut out.
And just to be more specific, Grassroots Economics, project by the Red Cross, has 11 community currencies that have generated 70,000 transactions on the POA network, like the actual POA network, the guys that created XDAI. They're moving to XDAI right now. They're using feature phones, dumb phones, moving money around that are community currencies that are balanced by bonding curves. It's an incredible project. Grassecon.org, I think, is a pointer URL. And they are very excited about the Common Stack, and they could very well apply to Common Stack now, but they keep all of the money is custodial, right? So the people using feature phones don't actually hold the crypto. And when I'm speaking, I'm thinking of like when are we going to have all of our ideals satisfied, where everything is like real, decentralized and applied in a way that would be resistant to government influence and external forces that might prevent this if they have a different idea. So it'll be a while before that, but hopefully people like Will Ruddick will be able to take our tech and use it for real people right away.
That is beautifully said, and it would be very nice to conclude on this, but we have one more question, so we're going to get to that one first. Also wanted to say that I just put the link to grassrooteconomics.org in the chat, and again, we'll add all of the links, all of the things that we discussed in the notes. So this final question that we have, so Z Zargam has to leave right now, so thank you so much, Z, for having been here.
Thank you, Z.
And we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for all the great answers. We have one more question, as said, and that is, so we are called the Commons Stack. So we're doing this for the Commons. So Jeff, the question is then now, could you maybe briefly explain, like, because we haven't really talked all that much about it, what is the difference between a Commons and a cooperative?
Yeah. So I would say a cooperative is a group of people that co-own and also share value produced by that group. A commons takes it a step further, and how David Bollier defines a commons is that it's a community of people. It's also a resource governed by that community of people. And it's also the rules that community uses to govern that resource. So it's all three of those and the dynamic interplay between those. So there have been lots of really great commons advocates. Elinor Ostrom is one of our favorites. Michelle Bowens has also done some amazing contemporary work. There are a lot of P2P and commons efforts out there right now that are really cool and worth looking into. But we see the commons is the dynamic interplay between a community, the resource governed, and the rules used to govern those. And Ostrom came up with these 8 rules for managing, stewarding a commons, which we definitely take to heart. And actually, we have an article coming out within the next week that really goes into depth in these rules and why they're important socially, and also how the technology and the culture that we are. This cultural playbook that we're building in the Commons Stack allows communities to kind of adopt these rules as an easy to deploy template, and also potentially scaling, Commons initiatives beyond, the level that they're able to reach today in small local communities. We really hope that with the technology we're building and the cultural playbook we're putting together, we can help scale these kinds of movements. And I don't mean just scale, in a traditional capitalist sense, but but to allow it to proliferate and offer alternatives to the way we produce and value output in the world.
Okay, great. So Bernd has to go as well. So thanks, Bernd. So thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, bye.
And yeah, so what Bernd was also just like, he was quickly sending me a message on this. Well, I think I can just like conclude by just thanking everyone. So Bernd, first of all, who just had to jump off. And he also wanted to give a quick shout out to Patrick Storchenegger and Raphael Baumann, who helped us out with the legal setup of the Commons Stack. So thank you so much. Also to Zargam, who just jumped off a little bit before. And then, of course, to all the people who have been asking all these fantastic questions. We would love to do another AMA in the future. So if you enjoyed this, let us know. That motivates us to do another one. And we have so much more to talk about. We could talk forever. And then to conclude, I would say, first of all, thank you for me. And as we always do, we always pass it around. So I'm going to shut up now and I just give it to Griff.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for asking us so many questions. They were really good. There's so many things I want to rant on. I'm going to restrain myself. Polycentric governance, please someone ask about that. I really want to go off, but I'll let it go. Yeah, next day in May, and I'll pass it to Lorelei.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, this was a really like dynamic conversation, and I appreciated the ability like to go into like social structures and then not just the technical, because of course there's unending questions about that.
Radical.
Yeah. This was really fun. Thank you. I can't believe there's so many people live asking questions. It's super awesome. Thank you so much. And I hope we get to meet all of you who are on YouTube commenting right now. And I'll pass it to Jeff.
Yeah, thanks everybody for the great call, and looking forward to the next AMA, or maybe we'll catch you live at the next conference.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Anyways.
Bye.